first thing I understood, before I understood my own name, was that the light was wrong. Low and gray and flat, lying across the blanket like something spilled. I had gone to sleep in June. My arm would not do what I asked it to. That was the second thing. I could see it there against the sheet, thinner than my arm had ever been, and I sent the order down and nothing happened, and I sent it again, and my fingers moved about a quarter inch and then quit, like they were owed overtime. A man in navy scrubs came in, holding a paper cup, saw my open eyes, and did not drop the cup, which I respected. "Well," he said, "okay." "Water," I said, except it came out as a sound with no consonants in it, a sort of rasp, and my throat felt scraped hollow. He got me ice chips instead, and he did it fast, and while he did it, he pressed a button on the wall and talked to somebody in a calm voice that had an edge underneath it. His badge said Curtis Fowler, RN. He had the build of a man who moved patients for a living and the face of a man who had been on shift for 11 hours. "Elias," he said, "you're at Belcourt in Wauwatosa. Do you know what that means?" Wauwatosa meant home. Wauwatosa meant 15 minutes from the house I grew up in, and about the same from the office where I had been sitting the last night I remembered, with a plastic container of cold rice and a spreadsheet that would not balance. "Milwaukee," I said, or scraped. "Good. That's good." He crouched a little so I would not have to move. "I need you to hear the next part slow. It's going to sound like a joke and it isn't one." "Is it the light?" I said. Curtis stopped. "What?" "It's February," I said. "Something like February?" "January," he said. "The 19th. I did the arithmetic in my head and got 7 months, and knew, from his face, that I had gotten it very wrong. He told me, 4 years. 4 years and change. He said the word coma and then a lot of other words after it, the kind that comes stapled together, and I listened to maybe a third of them because I was looking past his shoulder at the chair. It was a visitor chair, vinyl, the exact ugly mustard color that institutions buy in bulk. The left armrest was worn through to the foam, not scuffed, worn, the way a wooden step gets worn, by one person putting weight in the same place over and over for a very long time. There was a stack of paperbacks on the windowsill beside it, 11 or 12 of them, spines cracked white. A small radio with a strip of blue tape on the side, a coffee ring on the sill that somebody had wiped at and given up on. None of it belonged to my brothers. I knew that the way you know your own house. Warren does not read paperbacks. Reed would not have permitted a coffee ring to exist in his general vicinity. Miles has never in his life sat in a chair long enough to wear it down, and Cole, when we were kids, could not sit through a 9-inning game without getting up 4 times. "Curtis," I said, "who's been in that chair?" He looked at it, and then at me, and something in his expression got careful. "There's a visitor log," he said. "You want the honest version, or the version I'm supposed to give you when your doctor's in the room?" "Honest?" He went to the door and came back with a clipboard, 4 years thick, and he did not read it to me. He just turned it so I could see, and thumbed backward through it, page after page, and I watched one name go by in the same handwriting, over and over, like a heartbeat printed on paper. Theo Marsh. Tuesdays. Fridays. A lot of Sundays. Some nights so late the time column said things like 11:40 p.m. I had never heard the name before in my life. My brothers were in there too, toward the back. The first 4 or 5 months of it, the 4 of them in a dense cluster, and then thinning, and then a long white nothing, broken up by a signature at Christmas. "There's a thing I have to ask," I said, "and I need you not to be nice about the answer. Did they stop coming, or did they stop mattering to whoever holds this clipboard?" "They stopped coming," Curtis said. I was still holding that when the door opened without a knock. Warren filled it the way he fills everything, in a wool coat with lake weather still on the shoulders of it, phone in his hand and screen still lit. 39 now, I calculated, and it showed at the temples. My oldest brother looked at me lying there awake after 4 years, and did not say my name. What he said was, "What do you remember about that night?" Not hello, not a hand on my arm. A question, delivered flat, and his thumb never left the phone. "Nothing," I said. Leaving the office. Rain on the parking structure. Nothing after. Nothing after. And I watched my brother's shoulders come down half an inch, and I understood that whatever I had just told him, he had wanted to hear it. He put the phone in his pocket. He became, all at once, extremely pleasant, and that scared me more than the arithmetic had. "We'll handle the announcement," he said. "Families flying in. Don't talk to anybody until Reed gets here." Then he turned to Curtis and pointed at the clipboard still lying across my legs and said it like it was a small item on a long list. "And that one. Theo Marsh. He doesn't come back in this room." "Say that again," I said. Warren was already half turned toward the hallway. He looked back at me with the patience of a man who has explained a spreadsheet twice. "You need rest. Not a stranger hovering over you. He isn't hovering, he's been sitting." I got my hand about 2 inches off the blanket, and it took everything I had, and I pointed at the chair with the worn armrest so there could be no confusion about what I meant. For 4 years, in that. "Elias, you came for 5 months. It landed. I watched it land, in the small tightening at the corner of his mouth, and then I watched him decide not to pick it up. We'll talk when Reed's here," Warren said, and left. The door eased shut on its slow hinge. Curtis stood there, holding the clipboard against his chest like a man who had accidentally walked into a family Thanksgiving. "For the record," he said, "your brother doesn't get to ban anybody. Visitor restrictions come from you or from the doctor. You're awake, so they come from you. Then, unban him." He was never banned. Warren just said a sentence in a room. Curtis set the clipboard on the tray table where I could reach it. "Your speech is better than it should be. That's not luck. Somebody talked to you every week for 4 years, and your brain kept the wiring open." I looked at the paperbacks on the sill. 11 of them. 12. "Out loud," I said. "Out loud." I asked what Theo Marsh looked like, and Curtis said, in the flattest voice he owned, that he was not going to describe a man to me so I could decide about him before I met him, and that he was going off shift in 40 minutes and had to chart 11 patients. Then, at the door, he added that Fridays were a Theo day, and that it was Friday, and that this was information anyone could get from a public visiting schedule. I liked Curtis Fowler a great deal. The next 2 hours went to a neurologist with cold hands, a swallow study, and a young resident who kept saying "remarkable" while writing things down. I answered everything twice. Somewhere in the middle of it, my body simply switched off, and when I surfaced again, the gray had gone out of the window, and the parking lot lights were on, and there was a man standing just inside my door with his coat still buttoned, not coming any closer. He was maybe my age. Dark hair pushed back and grown out past the point where he had meant to cut it. A canvas bag over one shoulder with a paperback writing in the outside pocket. Spine cracked white, same as the ones on my sill. He had the stillness of somebody who has learned how to be in a hospital room. Neither of us said anything for a while. "You're awake," he said finally. "Since about 6 this morning." "I know." Curtis called me. He did not move. "I've been in the parking structure since 11. That's 7 hours." I counted. "Why?" He looked at the chair. Not at me. At the chair, with the armrest worn down to the foam, and something went across his face that he put away fast. "Because when you sit in that thing for 4 years," he said, "you build up a whole idea of a person, and then he wakes up and he's an actual man, and the idea has to die. I have run meetings with people who hated me. I have never in my life been less sure of what to say." "Come in," I said. "You paid for the parking." He almost smiled. It was a near miss, but I saw it go by. He came in and sat, and his body knew the chair the way you know your own bed, and that was somehow the worst part. He did not take his coat off. He did not reach for my hand. He sat with his bag in his lap, like a man at a bus station. "Theo Marsh," he said. "I read that this morning. 11 pages of it." "They let you see the log?" I asked. He turned that over. "Then you know your brothers signed it too." "I know when they stopped." Theo's jaw moved. He looked at the window, at the lot, at the 4 floors of other people's emergencies stacked under us. "I'm not going to badmouth your family while you're 12 hours into being alive," he said. "You'll want them. Everybody wants them." "That sounds like practice." "It's Tuesday and Friday for 4 years. I've had time to work on my material." There it was, dry, low, delivered without looking at me, and I laughed, which hurt my ribs and my throat and every unused thing in me, and he finally turned his head. "Sorry," he said. "You laughed. Apparently, you didn't do that before." And there it was again, that sideways drop into a hole in the floor. Before. Theo. I made myself say it slowly, because it was going to be a bad question no matter how I said it. "I don't know you, not one thing, not your face, not your name, nothing. Whoever I was to you, I can't find it." He nodded, like he had been expecting it since the parking structure. "I know," he said. "The doctors told me it was likely." He reached into the canvas bag then and took out a phone that was too old to be his current one, dead black screen, and held it in both hands without turning it on. "But I need you to understand one thing tonight, and then I'll go, and you can decide whether I come back Tuesday." He looked up. "4 years ago, 11 minutes before your car went off that ramp, you called me." "I don't remember calling anybody." "No," Theo said. "And your brother Warren has spent 4 years making very sure nobody asks me what you said." "Say the rest of it," I said. Theo turned the dead phone over in his hands. "Not tonight. You drove here. You sat in a parking structure for 7 hours. You did not do that to give me half. I did it to see if you woke up as somebody who'd want the other half." He set the phone on the tray table, screen down, beside the water pitcher. "That's not a line. That's an actual question I had." I looked at the phone. Old model, the kind with the flat corners, a hairline crack running up from the charge port. Somebody had kept it in a drawer for 4 years and not thrown it out. "Fine, then answer a smaller one." My voice was giving out and I pushed it anyway. "How long was the call?" 3 minutes and 40 seconds. "You know that to the second." "I know it to the second." "What did I ask you to do?" He was quiet long enough that the hallway noise came in, a cartwheel with a bad bearing going past, somebody laughing 2 rooms down. "You asked me to keep something to myself," Theo said. "Until Monday. You said give me until Monday and I'll handle it, and I said okay." "And?" He looked at me straight on for the first time since he sat down. "And I hung up and I got scared, and I called your brother." The room got very specific, the rail under my hand, the tape pulling at the crook of my elbow. Theo Marsh, sitting in a chair he had worn down to foam, telling me the thing he had clearly rehearsed in a parking structure for 7 hours and probably for 4 years before that. "Which brother?" I said. "Warren." "How long after?" 6 minutes, his hands had gone still. 11 minutes after you called me. Your car went through the barrier on the zoo interchange ramp. State Patrol said you were doing 60 in the rain and never braked. I did the sum out loud because I needed to hear how insane it sounded. "So you think you killed me?" "I think I made a phone call," Theo said, "and then a thing happened. And I've had 1,400 nights to decide whether those are the same sentence. I have been in rooms where people cried to get something. This was not that." He was not asking me for absolution, and he was not going to take it if I handed it over, and I understood, with a clarity that surprised me, that he had come here to give me a weapon and then let me decide what to do with it. "Theo, don't." "I was doing 60 in the rain," I said. "You weren't in the car." His mouth did something complicated. He stood up fast, the way people stand when they need the moment to end, and he was reaching for his bag when the door opened. Reed came in like a man arriving at a meeting he had scheduled. Charcoal overcoat, no lake weather on it, so he had come from a garage and not a curb. 36, glasses he had not worn before, a leather folder under one arm. He stopped when he saw Theo, and the temperature in the room dropped about 4 degrees, and neither of them said hello. "Visiting hours ended at 8, Reed said. "They end at 9, Theo said. "They end when the patient's family says they end. Then it's a good thing the patient's awake." I got that out with maybe 60% of the volume I wanted. "Theo, Tuesday." He looked back at me from the doorway. Something moved across his face that I did not have the history to read. "Tuesday," he said and went. Reed took the chair. He did not notice the armrest. He set the folder on his knees, squared it, and looked at me the way you look at a quarterly number that came in wrong. "You look better than I expected," he said. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me today." Warren opened with an interrogation. "Warren's under pressure." Warren asked me what I remembered before he asked how I felt. Reed's fingers stopped on the folder. It was 1 second, maybe less, and then it passed. You've been awake 14 hours and you're already keeping score. I've been asleep 4 years, Reed. Score's all I've got. And there it was, the first real crack in him, because he laughed, short and unwilling and genuine. My brother put a hand over his mouth like he had sworn not to. God, he said, it's actually you. Who else would it be? You have no idea what the last 4 years looked like. He said it quietly, and for a second I could see the whole shape of it, whatever it was. Then he opened the folder and became a lawyer again. There's paperwork, not tonight, but soon, and I'd rather you hear it from me than from Warren at a bad moment. When the doctors called it, we had to petition the court. Guardianship. Somebody had to sign for your care, your accounts, your interest in the firm. Somebody meaning Warren. Somebody meaning the 4 of us. It's unwound with a physician's letter and a hearing. It's a formality. He held out the top page so I could see it, and I took it in a hand that shook more than I liked, and I read the caption and the case number and the names of my 4 brothers in a row. Then I read the filing date, October the 8th. My accident was in June, but the office where I had eaten cold rice and fought a spreadsheet, the last night I remembered, the very last thing in my head before the wrong gray light, that had been the 2nd week of April. Reed, I said, why does this say October? Reed did not answer right away. He took his glasses off, folded them, and held them, which I recognized as the thing he does instead of swearing. Guardianship isn't a form you drop off, he said. It's a petition. There's an evaluation, a court-appointed attorney for you, a hearing. 4 months is fast. You filed in October. We filed in July. I let that sit. Then October is what? October is when we filed again. He put the glasses back on. The first petition was contested. By who? Reed looked at me for a long moment, and I watched him arrive somewhere he had not planned to go this evening. You really don't remember any of it, he said. I remember eating cold rice at my desk, and a variance in the Delafield numbers that would not close. 2nd week of April. My throat was sandpaper. I kept going anyway. That's the last thing in my head, Reed. That's the newest thing I own. He went still in a way I did not like. April, he repeated. Yes. Not May. What happens in May? And there it was, the same thing I had seen in Warren that morning, the same half-inch of release in the shoulders, except Reed had the decency to look ashamed of it half a second later. Okay, I said. Both of you needed me to not remember something. Warren opened with it. You just did it quieter. That isn't what happened. Then tell me what's in May. Reed set the folder on the tray table beside the dead phone, and I saw him notice the phone, and I saw him choose not to ask. In May, he said, you resigned from Merritt Fabrication. Effective immediately. You cleared your office on a Sunday so nobody would be there. The room did that trick again where everything got very sharp. 14 years. I started in that building at 19, hauling stock in the summer, and I ran the whole cost side by 30. My father's name is on the sign in a font he picked himself. That's not something I'd do. You did it. Why? You wouldn't say. Reed's voice came down. That's not me protecting you. That's the actual answer. Warren asked. Miles asked. Cole showed up at your apartment twice and you fed him and talked about the Brewers for 2 hours and told him nothing. You went quiet for 6 weeks, and then you went off a ramp in the rain, and the 4 of us have been standing in the wreckage of both of those things ever since. I understood then part of what had happened to my brothers. Not all of it. But you can only sit beside a question that long before you start hating the chair. So, when you say the petition was contested, I said, Elias. Somebody stood up in a courtroom and told a judge that my 4 brothers should not be making decisions for me. Somebody with a lawyer and a filing fee. My hand was on the folder now. In July, when I had been unconscious for a month, who has that kind of standing over the family? Reed did not reach to take the folder back. That was how I knew. He turned the pages himself, past the caption, past a physician's declaration, to a tab in the back, and he squared it and slid it toward me and sat back with his hands open on his knees, like a man setting down something heavy at the end of a long walk. It was a healthcare power of attorney. 2 pages, plain language, the kind you can print off the state website and sign in a kitchen. It named an agent to make medical decisions if I could not make my own, and it revoked any prior designation, and it was witnessed by a notary in a strip mall on Blue Mound Road. Theo Marsh. I read his name 3 times, and then I read mine, and then I read my own signature, which is a mess, which has always been a mess, which is unmistakably mine because it is the only handwriting on earth I have looked at every day since I was 22. The date was the 9th of May. He had standing, Reed said quietly. He had more standing than we did. He'd had it since May, and none of us knew until a court clerk called Warren in July. I could not make my hand let go of the page. I signed this 3 weeks before the crash. Yes, I signed a document giving a man I have never met the right to decide whether I lived. You met him, Reed said. That's what I've been trying to say all night. Whatever happened in May, he was in it. He's the only one who was. The cart with the bad bearing went past again in the hall. Somewhere down the corridor a television was playing to nobody. Did he win? I said. He withdrew. Reed took his glasses off again. September, no explanation, no hearing. He walked into the clerk's office, filed a 2-line withdrawal, and let us have it. And then he kept coming here twice a week for 3 more years. He stood up and buttoned his coat. I've never understood it. Warren has one theory about it and I have another, and neither of us has ever said them out loud in the same room. At the door he stopped, and he looked at the chair, and I watched my brother finally see the armrest. Get some sleep, Reed said. Miles lands at 11. The door shut. I lay there with a notarized page in my hand and no memory attached to any part of it, and then I reached, slowly, for the dead phone Theo had left screen down on my tray. Curtis, I said, when the shape of him went past my door. I need a charger. Curtis brought the charger an hour later, and a look that said he knew exactly what he was participating in. Battery's dead 4 years, he said, plugging it in behind the bed rail. It'll take a while. And Elias, whatever's on there, it's going to be from before. It won't have gotten any kinder while it sat in a drawer. I know. Sleep first. Absolutely, I said, and did not. The phone came up sometime after 2, the screen throwing that old blue light across the blanket. No password, which told me something about who I had been that spring, because I have never in my life not had a password. The last thing I had done on it was record a voice memo. 16 seconds. Time-stamped the 9th of May, 8:41 in the evening. The same day as the notary in the strip mall on Blue Mound. I sat with my thumb over it for a long time. Then I turned the volume down so the hallway would not hear, and pressed play, and heard my own voice come out of a machine, younger by 4 years, tired in a way I could hear from the inside. Okay, if I'm listening to this later and I've talked myself out of it, don't. You already know what's in the Delafield file and you already know who signed it, and the fact that it's family doesn't make it not what it is. Theo said tell somebody, so tell somebody. Monday. A pause. Traffic sound behind him, behind me. And if it's not me listening to this, if it's anybody else, a breath. Ask Miles about the second invoice run. That was all. I played it 3 more times. The 4th time I stopped hearing it as information and started hearing it as a man alone in a car who had already understood he might not get to do the thing himself. Delafield. The variance that would not close. The last real thing in my head, and I had gone to sleep thinking it was an accounting error. I did not cry. I want that on the record, because I have thought about it since, and I am fairly sure the reason was smaller than dignity. I think I simply could not get to the feeling. There was too much wall in front of it. What I felt instead was awake. Properly awake, for the first time since the gray light. The way you come alive when a problem finally has edges. Miles landed at 11 and got to my room at past, and I had about 6 hours to decide what kind of brother I was going to be to him. He came in with a duffel he had not dropped at a hotel and a face he had clearly worked on in the elevator. 33. Beard now. He stopped 2 feet inside the door and just looked at me, and then he crossed the room in 3 steps and put his forehead down on the blanket beside my hand and stayed there. I had been ready for a lot of things. I had not been ready for that. "You absolute idiot," he said into the blanket. "Hi, Miles. 60 in the rain. I've been told." I flew Milwaukee to Denver twice a month for 2 years, and then I stopped, and I have never once been able to explain to anybody why I stopped. He lifted his head. His eyes were a wreck. "Do you know what Warren said to me on the phone this morning?" He said, quote, "He doesn't remember anything. We're fine." He said, "We're fine, Elias." There is a version of me that would have used that. It was sitting right there, the shape of it. How easy it would be to take the man crying on my blanket and steer him. "Sit down before you fall down," I said. "You look like a Craigslist couch." He laughed, wet and ugly, and dropped into the chair with the worn armrest without noticing what he was sitting in, and for about 20 minutes we were brothers. He told me Cole was driving up from Chicago and had gotten a speeding ticket doing it, which was the most Cole information ever transmitted in one sentence. He told me Reed had a daughter now, 2 years old, named for our mother. He told me the plant in Delafield had shut down in the 2nd year. "Shut down," I said. "Sold. Warren restructured. It was a mess for a while." He rubbed his face. "Nobody wanted to touch anything with your name near it. There was a stretch where every file you'd worked on got looked at twice." I let a beat go by. "Just one. Miles, what's the 2nd invoice run?" It was like watching a door close behind a man's eyes. He did not shout. He did not deny it. He sat forward with his elbows on his knees and looked at the floor tiles for what felt like a full minute, and when he spoke, his voice had changed register entirely, quieter and much older. "Who said that to you?" "I did," I said. 3 weeks before the crash, into a phone. I've had it in my hand since 2 in the morning. Miles closed his eyes. "Okay," he said. "Okay." He stood up, went to the door, and looked out into the corridor both ways, like a man in a movie about a man in trouble. Then he came back and stood over me and said the last thing I expected. "Not here, not on anything with a screen." He picked up the dead man's phone off my tray and pulled the charger out of it. "Elias, when I say this, I need you to not react out loud. Say it. It wasn't Warren who signed that file." I did not react out loud. "It took something." "Then who?" I said. Miles pocketed the phone. "You're going to hate this answer, and then in about 10 seconds, you're going to understand it." "Miles, you did." I looked at him. "Your name is on it," he said. "Your login, your approval chain, your initials on the 2nd run. That's the whole thing. That's what nobody in this family has been able to say to your face for 4 years, because for 2 of those years, you were a person who might wake up, and for the other 2, you were a person who probably wouldn't." He sat back down. "Warren pulled it before the auditors did. He shut Delafield, sold the line and buried it, and he told all of us it was a restructure. I found out in the 3rd year by accident. The Delafield variance, the thing I could not close." "How much?" $2.1 million across 19 months. And it goes out under my chain. Under your chain. I lay there and let the arithmetic run, which is the only thing I have ever been actually good at. 19 months. Which meant it started long before I noticed. Which meant somebody with access had been running invoices through a lane I owned, and I had found the tail end of it in April, and by May I had gone to a notary in a strip mall with a man named Theo Marsh and signed away who got to decide whether I lived. "That's why Warren's first question was what I remembered," I said. "That's why Warren's first question is always what somebody remembers. And you flew here from Denver twice a month for 2 years while sitting on this." I didn't have it then. Miles' jaw worked. "And when I got it, I stopped flying. Draw whatever you want from that. I've drawn plenty." Cole came in at 4 in the afternoon with a duffel, a speeding ticket folded into his jacket pocket, and a sheet cake. An actual sheet cake from a grocery store, white frosting, with "Happy Birthday Elias" written on it in blue gel, and the last 2 letters crowded because he had run out of room. 29 years old, and he walked into a neurology ward, carrying a cake, like a man delivering a subpoena. "Cole, it's 4 years of birthdays," he said. "I'm not doing 4 cakes. This is the compression. I can't eat solid food. I'm aware. It's not for you, it's for me. I've been waiting." He put it on the tray table, saw the folder, moved the folder, and sat down on the edge of my bed instead of the chair, which nobody else had done, Then he looked at me properly, and his face came apart for about 2 seconds before he got it back. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Hi. Hi. You look terrible. I've been horizontal since the Obama administration. That's not even close to right. I know. I'm testing what people correct." Cole laughed, and it was the first uncomplicated sound anyone had made in that room, and I understood immediately why Theo had warned me. Everybody wants them. He was right. I wanted this one so much it was a problem. He cut himself a corner piece with a plastic knife and ate it off a napkin, and while he ate, he told me things nobody else had bothered with. That the Brewers had been good and then not. That he had a dog. That he had visited every week for the first year, and then it had started making him physically sick to walk in the building, and he had gone to therapy about it, and the therapist had told him that was called avoidance, and he had said, "Yes, I know. I looked it up in the parking lot." "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in 2 days," I said. "Low bar. Warren's been here how many times?" "Once. He told a nurse to keep somebody out of my room." Cole stopped chewing. "Theo," he said. The way he said it went through me. Not surprise. Recognition, with something underneath it. "You know him. I met him twice." Cole set the napkin down. "Second year. He was in the chair when I came in, and he got up to leave, and I said don't, and we ended up in the cafeteria for 2 hours. He was quiet a moment. He knew what you took in your coffee. He knew you hated your own birthday. He knew about the summer you hauled stock and threw your back out, and never told Dad. He looked at me. I'm your brother, and I didn't know that one. I don't remember him at all, Cole. Not his face, nothing." "Yeah, well," Cole rubbed the back of his neck. "That's going to be a thing, isn't it? Did he tell you anything about May?" He told me one sentence about May, and then he shut it down so hard I never asked again. Cole picked up the plastic knife, put it down. He said, "Your brother tried to do the right thing quietly, and it cost him everything, and quiet was the mistake." The door opened. Warren stood there in the same wool coat with 2 men behind him in the corridor, who were very clearly not family, and one of them was holding a document folder in the way people hold documents when the documents are the point. "Everybody out," Warren said. "Elias, there's a physician's letter, and we're doing the guardianship hearing Thursday." He came to the end of the bed. "And I need you to sign a limited proxy tonight." Reed drafted it. "It's temporary, it's narrow, it covers your interest in the firm through the end of the quarter." Cole was already standing. "Warren, he woke up yesterday." "Which is exactly why we do it tonight," Warren said, "before anybody outside this family finds out he's awake." I did not look at the folder. I looked at the 2 men in the corridor. "Who are they?" "Counsel," Warren said. "Whose?" "The firm's." "Then they can stand in the hall, since I'm not the firm." My voice was still wrecked, and it carried anyway, because I had spent 14 years learning how to say a hard sentence quietly, in a room full of men who were louder. Cole shut the door, on the outside. Cole hesitated. "Please," I said. He went. The door clicked. It was Warren, Miles, and me, and a sheet cake with the letters crowded at the end. "Sit down," I said. "I'll stand." "Warren, I weigh 130 pounds and I can't lift my own arm. You standing over me isn't power, it's just posture." He sat. On the visitor chair, the worn one, and he did not notice it either. "Delafield," I said. Nothing moved in his face. That was the tell. Nobody's face does that naturally. "What about it?" 19 months, 2.1 million, second invoice run under my approval chain. I let each piece land on its own. You pulled it before the auditors, you shut the plant, sold the line, and told the family it was a restructure. Warren turned his head about 10 degrees toward Miles. "Don't," I said. He told me because I asked him a question I already had the answer to. It came off a voice memo I recorded on the 9th of May, in a car, 3 weeks before I went off the ramp. My own voice. "Warren, you can't manage my voice." He was quiet a long moment. Then he said, "What's on it?" "That's the wrong question. It's the only question I've had for 4 years." And something in the way he said it stopped me. Not defensive, worn down to the foam. "Then here's an answer," I said. It says the fact that it's family doesn't make it not what it is. It says I was going to tell somebody on Monday. I watched my oldest brother take that the way a man takes a hit. He has been bracing for so long that the bracing became his shape. On Monday, he repeated. Yes. You never got to Monday. No. Warren put both hands over his face. He held them there for maybe 4 seconds, which from him was the equivalent of a man screaming. I thought it was you, he said. The room went very quiet. I found it in July while you were unconscious, he said. Your login, your chain, your initials on the second run, 19 months of them, and I knew you. I knew you the way you know a hand you've had your whole life, and I sat in an office at 2 a.m. and looked at the file and thought, he did this, and I still could not make myself believe it, and it did not matter what I believed because that is what the paper said. So you buried it. I paid it. Miles made a small sound. Say that again, I said. I sold the Delafield line for less than it was worth, to a buyer who did not ask questions, and I put every dollar of that, plus what I had against the whole, and I have been closing the rest of it out of my own draw for 3.5 years. He lowered his hands. He looked awful. Ask Reed. Reed structured it. Reed has hated me for 3 of those years and did it anyway. Why? Because if it surfaced with your name on it, and you were lying in a bed unable to defend one syllable of it. Warren's voice finally broke somewhere in the middle. Because Dad's name is on that building, and the 4 of us would have spent the rest of our lives being the family whose middle brother stole $2 million while he was in a coma, and couldn't say otherwise. You could have asked me. You were not there to ask. I was here, twice a week. Somebody sat in that chair you're in, and talked to me out loud for 4 years, and it wasn't you. He looked down. Then, finally, at the armrest under his hand, at the place worn through, and I watched my brother understand what he had been sitting in this entire time. No, Warren said. It wasn't. Nobody said anything. Down the hall, the television was still playing to an empty room. Then the proxy isn't about the quarter, I said. The proxy is so that when you sign anything, it goes through me first, and nobody outside this family ever gets a document with your name and Delafield in the same sentence. He put the folder on the bed. I am not asking you to trust me. I stopped being able to expect that in year 2. I'm asking you to let me finish paying for something before you take the lid off it. Warren. I picked the folder up and I did not open it. I didn't do it. He did not answer. Look at me. He did. I found it, I said. In April, I found the tail of it, and I could not close the variance, because it was not an error, and I spent 6 weeks alone, trying to figure out how to say it out loud, without setting fire to my own family. That's what May was. That's why I went quiet. And you have spent 4 years and a lot of your own money protecting the wrong man from the truth. Warren's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. Which means, I said, that whoever's name should be in that second run is still out there. And has had 4 years of quiet. The door opened behind him. Theo stood in it with his coat over his arm, a paper coffee cup in one hand, looking at the room full of Merritts. It's Tuesday, he said. Warren stood up out of the chair. For a second I thought it was going to be ugly. Then he did the thing I would not have predicted from him at any point in my life before that week. He picked up his coat, and he looked at Theo, and he said, "The chair's yours." Theo did not move out of the doorway. I know. That wasn't a permission, it was an apology. Warren's hand was already on the doorframe. Elias, Thursday still happens, but I'll tell Reed to file the letter for restoration, not guardianship. And the men in the hallway? They can bill me for the drive. He went. Miles looked at me, then at Theo, then made a small helpless gesture that took in the entire room and the cake and the last 4 years, and followed him out. The door shut, and it was 2 of us and a paper coffee cup. You heard some of that, I said. I heard the part about Delafield. Theo came in and set the cup on the tray table, and only then did I see there were 2, one wedged inside the other, the way you carry them when your hands are full. He separated them and put the second within reach of my hand. Room temperature. They won't let you have hot yet. I looked at it. You know what I take. You take too much sugar for a man who does arithmetic for a living. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got that isn't heavy. He sat, coat still on, same as Friday. I brought it every Tuesday for 4 years and drank it myself. It got to be the thing I did. There is no clean way to describe what that did to me. I had known him for 2 conversations. He had known me for a decade of Tuesdays, half of them one-sided. Theo, why did you withdraw? He went still. Reed told me somebody contested the guardianship in July, and then walked into a clerk's office in September and gave it up in 2 lines. He said Warren has one theory and he has another, and neither of them has ever said it out loud. I made myself keep going. I'd rather have yours. Theo turned the cup a quarter turn on the tray table. He did that twice. Because I read the file, he said. Which file? The one you were carrying in May. You gave me a copy. You said if anything happened to you, somebody outside the family should have it. He looked up. In September, I finally understood what was in it. And I understood that if I stayed on the record as your agent, then everything I ever did with that file looks like a man with a grudge going after the Merritts. Every page of it becomes leverage instead of evidence. So you gave up the right to decide whether I lived. I gave up the right to be doubted. His voice stayed level. Your brothers would have kept you alive. I never had a single doubt about that. Whatever else they are, not one of those 4 men was ever going to let you die. He shook his head slowly. But if I'd stayed the agent of record and then handed a regulator $2.1 million of your family's problems, nobody on this earth would have read that as anything but revenge. You held it for 3.5 years. I held it for you. He said it plainly, and it went through me anyway. It was your call to make. You said Monday. So I waited for a Monday. I put my hand around the cup. It took some doing. He watched me manage it and did not help, and I understood that he had learned, over 4 years, exactly how much helping a person is allowed to do. You should have used it, I said. Probably. Warren spent 3.5 years paying that hole out of his own draw, thinking it was me. Reed structured it and hated him for it. Cole stopped being able to walk into this building. Miles stopped flying. My throat was going. You could have ended that in an afternoon. And you'd have woken up to a family that had been dismantled by a man you don't remember. Theo leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time he was close enough that I could see how tired he actually was. I thought about that every Tuesday. I sat in this chair and I said, if he wakes up, does he get to choose? And the answer was always the same, and I hated it, and I came back the next Tuesday. Neither of us said anything for a while. The window had gone dark again. Somebody wheeled the bad bearing past, and it was almost funny how the world outside the door kept doing its rounds. Theo. Yeah. I can't remember your face. I've tried. I've had 2 nights of nothing to do but try. He nodded slowly. But I've been awake 3 days, I said, and everybody who's come through that door has wanted me to remember something, or wanted me to forget something. You're the only one who came in and asked whether I woke up as someone who'd want the truth. His hand was on the armrest, the worn one, the place his own weight had made over 4 years. I got mine as far as the rail. That was as far as it went. I don't know what we were, I said. But I know what I'd like to find out. Theo looked at my hand on the rail for a long moment. Then he covered it with his, and turned it, and held on properly, and the whole room contracted to about 4 inches of contact. Monday, he said. What? You said Monday. 4 years ago. He did not let go. It's Tuesday, but I waited. And I'd like to know what you want to do about the file, Elias, because I brought it with me tonight. Give it to me, I said. Theo took a manila envelope out of the canvas bag and put it in my lap, and did not open it for me. I got the flap up on the 3rd try. Inside were 19 months of invoice detail, and clipped to the front, in my own handwriting, a single page listing 4 dates and 1 login, and 1 name that was not mine. I had known since Cole ate the corner of that cake. I think I had known since the memo. There is only one reason a man tells his own voice recorder to ask a specific brother a specific question. Bring them all in, I said. All 4. Tonight. Elias. Quiet was the mistake. I looked up at him. Somebody told me that. He got it from you. It took until nearly 10. Warren came back without the men in the hallway. Reed came from home in a sweater, which I had never once seen. Cole brought the cake back out of the fridge at the nurse's station because he did not know what else to do with his hands. Miles stood by the window. I did not read the page out. "Miles," I said, "you've got about 4 seconds to be the one who says it." He turned around. Whatever he had been holding for 4 years, he set it down right there in front of his brothers. "It was me," he said. Warren made a sound like he had been hit low. Miles told it flat, standing up. The way you confess when you have practiced in 100 airports. The Denver thing he had personally guaranteed. The first run, meant to be 6 weeks and paid back. My login, which he had used because I never changed it and because I trusted him. 19 months of it after that, because the hole got deeper the way holes do. I found out in the 3rd year that Warren was covering it, he said. That's when I stopped flying. Not because I stopped loving him. He was looking at me. Because I couldn't sit in a room with a man I was letting take the blame. You let him take it for 3.5 years, Reed said quietly. Yes. You let all of us think it was Elias. Yes. Warren had both hands on the back of the worn chair. He did not shout. He said, I sold Dad's line, and his voice went out from under him, and Cole crossed the room and stood next to him without saying anything, which was the right thing, and the only thing. I let it be silent a while. Then I said the thing I had been assembling since 2 in the morning with a dead phone in my hand. Here's what happens. Reed writes it up properly, Miles signs it, and he goes to the board with it himself, and he makes restitution to Warren before he makes it to anybody else, because Warren is the one who actually paid. I looked at my brother by the window. And you do not get to disappear afterward. You will be here on Tuesdays, until I can walk out of this building, and it is going to be humiliating and boring, and you are going to do it. Miles' face came apart. That's not a punishment. It is if you understand it. Warren looked at me across the bed, and he was 40 pounds of grief in a wool coat, and he said, why not just hand it to a regulator? You'd be clean in a week. Because I'd be clean and you'd be finished, I said. And because I spent 6 weeks in April trying to protect all of you by saying nothing, and that is what put me on that ramp. I'm not doing quiet again. I'm just not doing loud either. Nobody argued with me. That was new too. 11 weeks later, I walked out of Belcourt on 2 canes and refused a wheelchair the entire length of the corridor, which took 19 minutes and was, according to Curtis Fowler, the most annoying discharge of his career. Miles went to the board in March. The firm survived it, smaller. He is in Milwaukee now, in an apartment with no view, paying Warren back in monthly increments that will take him most of a decade. He comes on Tuesdays. He is always early. Reed brought his daughter to meet me in April. She is named for our mother and she did not like me at all, which Reed found hilarious for the first time in years. Cole put the sheet cake in his freezer. My memory of that spring never came back. I want to be honest about that because I spent months waiting for it like a man watching a door. It did not open. What I have of May is a voice memo, a notarized page from a strip mall, and a man's word. Theo's apartment is on the east side, 2nd floor. Radiators that knock. I moved in 3 days after my lease came up in June, which everyone told me was fast, and which was not fast at all. I had been going there every Tuesday and Friday for 4 months by then, and he had been coming to me for 4 years before that. I did not fall in love with him because of what we were. I do not know what we were. I fell in love with the man who brought 2 coffees for 4 years and drank one of them alone. The first time I kissed him, he had a paperback in his hand and did not put it down, and he laughed into my mouth, and then he did put it down. On the 9th of May, Cole took the cake out of the freezer. They came to the apartment, all 4 of them, and it was awkward for about 20 minutes, and then it was not. Warren fixed the radiator. Reed's daughter warmed to Theo instantly, and to me not at all. Miles stayed to do dishes. I have hated my own birthday my whole life. Theo knew that before he ever knew whether I would wake up. He put the compressed cake down in front of me with the crowded letters and said, 4 years of these. This is the compression. And Cole yelled that he had said that first. And I sat in a loud kitchen with everyone I have. The last thing I remember thinking, before somebody turned off the lights for the candles, was about the window. Late afternoon, May in Wisconsin, coming in gold across the table. The light was exactly right, and I knew what month it was, and I knew every face in the room. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, you'll definitely love the next one. It's even crazier and more intriguing than you can imagine. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. The next story drops soon.